For more on this report, let's go back to Pat.
Lorie's here with me right now. And Lorie, this is an amazing thing for women to not have to go. Chemo is so deadly to people. What does it do to people?
It's rough. First of all, it makes you feel terrible.
Yeah.
Anyone who's gone through chemotherapy knows that. It just wipes you out. You're so tired, and the nausea, and then your hair falls out. You know, a lot of people say the worst part about chemotherapy is your hair falling out. Yeah. We don't realize how important that is to us. But really, from a medical perspective, perhaps the greatest risk is the fact that it lowers your immunity and makes you more susceptible to infection. So a lot of people who go through chemo have to stay away from people because they're so at risk of getting an infection.
The medical establishment, it was just routine to give chemo, and now what they're saying is what? I mean, don't give the chemo except in certain cases? Is that it?
That is what they're saying. Doctors for years have been giving their patients a test. It's a genetic test, and it tests 21 genes to see how likely you are that your cancer might come back. And then they give you a score. And if you're on the low end of the score, they've known for a long time all you need is the hormone therapy. And if you're on the upper end of the score, we know that you need the hormone therapy and chemo. But it's those middle numbers, and we're talking about 70,000 people. They really weren't sure if you needed the hormone therapy and the chemo, so they did this study, and it's very reliable, and they found out great news. You don't need the chemo, that the hormone therapy is just as good. So this is wonderful news for, as I say, about 70,000 women who are diagnosed with this early stage of breast cancer every year. But I did want to say one caveat. Even if you're in that middle range, when people over 50 are recommended to just have the hormone therapy, but under 50, usually if you're premenopausal and you're diagnosed with breast cancer, it's a more aggressive type, so they're saying that they should still have the hormone therapy and the chemo.
Oh, my wife had lumpectomy and all that stuff, and always been, 30 years ago, but she just went ahead and had a mastectomy.
Right.
And then breast reconstruction. Is that radical? Is that we never had the chemo?
Well, these days they would do the triple whammy. They would do the radiation, chemotherapy, and the surgery. But what we're talking about here in this instance are people who have the early stages of breast cancer. Now, people who have the stages that are later, they would often do the surgery now as well, which brings up the point how important it is to find these cancers early. And the best way to do that is to get that yearly mammogram.
And they work, no problem. Mammogram.
They're very effective. I mean, they're not perfect, of course, but most doctors say get that mammogram every year. And the hormone therapy that they do is an estrogen blocker, because we know that estrogen feeds breast cancer. So those of us who are at high risk, who have had breast cancer in our family, my mom had it, just like Dee Dee. Mom had it many years ago and is still with us, thank the Lord. But we need to keep our estrogen levels down. So stay away from soy. Soy products raise your estrogen, so we need to stay away from that, especially the soybean oil, which is in so many of those processed foods. It's so bad. And then also red meat raises our estrogen level, and subcutaneous fat, belly fat, being overweight, that also raises our estrogen level. So we need to watch that stuff.
You got to come back and give us a